Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3-2. We're here on Xbox Series X with the beta. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So we're not going to be diving super deep into this from a visual graphical perspective, as we'll save that for the full release of the game. But there are two graphical modes that are present during the beta, and I would assume they will be reflected in the full release as well. The first is a kind of quality default mode that is a dynamic 4K at 60 FPS. It's smooth, it looks good for the most part, pretty clean, you know, it's usual standard presentation. The second is a high frame rate mode, so you know you gotta have a TV and everything that supports that. 120 FPS, 1440p dynamic. Basically, you know, what we were getting with Modern Warfare 2.2, which was the previous year's Call of Duty, is exactly what we're getting here visually for this one. With that, it is, in my opinion, this game very much the exact same gameplay from last year, just sped up to, at times, almost cartoony-like elements of speed, which, you know, kind of hit or miss on how well that fits for these maps, because these maps themselves are basically ripped from, you know, Call of Duty 14 years ago. Whether or not you experience that or experience that game over the years, you know, different players, different things, but to me it's like, this has been a very, very familiar beta, because I'm just, you know, I know all the maps, game is what I've been playing and streaming over the last year, and this is kind of the exact same. Probably the most same like it's been in like the history of the Call of Duty franchise, actually. It is kind of wild how close this is to literally other things I've already experienced. It really is just kind of surreal and bizarre, I don't know. But yeah, it's got all your standard movement. It does have some new weapons. The beta did try out a number of maps. We had Villa, Estate, Rust, High Rise, and then from there we did have some differing modes. So usually I play like, you know, Hardpoint Domination, but they did have this new one called Cutthroat, which seems to be a bit of a play on something that Sledgehammer had for Vanguard. So that mode is 3v3v3. Kind of a round-based ruthless killing thing, and then there's like a positional capture that you can kind of get in a overtime situation. So that might be of interest to you. For me, I was kind of indifferent towards that one. I didn't love it. Then we have Ground War, which is, you know, it's ground war, right? So it's kind of what we've seen in the past. Large scale, kind of positional objectives, vehicles. This time around, the beta was much better running than what we saw with the PS5 version, but I'm assuming they cleaned it up on there too. Yeah, because it was a little, you know, there's some issues last week, and there's still some kind of like lag kind of spike things that you know, aren't connection-based really, but just seem to be like game-based, so I would imagine that will get cleaned up, because again, it's a beta. You know, this is them kind of selling you on the game, like sort of like a demo almost, honestly, and then B, also, you know, getting the network stuff ironed out, making sure everything is kind of polished in case they missed anything large, and getting some initial feedback on, you know, how the game is looking, running, and everybody's thoughts, right? So yeah, I guess I would say I'm pleased with what I've played. That was a really weird way to say pleased, but I am pleased with what the beta has to offer. Like, it does run well, does look good. You know, I really like Modern Warfare 2.2, so this one, you know, is just a speedier version, which I can adapt to fine. It's just, for me, the big hurdle on this is gonna be like the familiarity. It's way too much. Like, as I said, I've played these maps, you know, I've seen them over the years too, and you know, I've experienced, like, I feel like I've experienced this game. You know, I've played it already for years, it feels like. And I get that people are like, oh, you know, Call of Duty's the same every year, and you know, to a degree, obviously it is because it's iterative, but you know, I've never felt like it's literally the same, and this literally feels the same. But I like Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. I do kind of like the maps, because, you know, the Modern Warfare 2, which I enjoyed when I was younger, and, you know, we still stream occasionally, because it keeps having fluctuations of popularity. But, like, you know, the biggest issue for me is I sit here and I play this, and I'm like, I know this game too well. Like, it's a little boring to me, because I know all the maps. Like, I don't have to learn anything. There's no, you know, exploring levels to find routes or figuring anything out. I've played it all. Like, Ground War is fresh, but I'm not really much of a Ground War player. You know, I do the traditional multiplayer setup here. That's what I'm interested in. And Ground War, you know, I will say, for a game like maps of that scale, it's actually pretty visually impressive. I mean, usually Warzone is, but usually Warzone you see like a bit of a quality dip because it's such a large-scale map, right? So, like, this actually visually does look really impressive, Ground War. It also looks like a little bit of, like, a Warzone type setup already, so I was like, oh, okay. But Warzone was, you know, it is what it is, and then Ground War is intriguing, large-scale warfare, kind of like out-battlefielding Battlefield at this point, which is humorous, I guess. It's definitely humorous to me. But I've unlocked everything in the beta, you know, I've done everything in the beta, I've been maxed out level for days in the beta, and I've experienced everything. You know, there's a good selection of guns. I was starting out pretty good on this one, and then, but yeah, there's, like, you know, good selection of weapons, perks. It seems like they're mostly testing specifically new stuff, you know, ahead of them adding in all of the legacy content from Modern Warfare 2.2, you know, that they're going to be adding. So it seems like they're kind of just testing out new stuff so that it feels a little bit different until they add in all the familiar skins and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it looks good, plays good. It's that modern action that you like and enjoy. It's just like, it's so familiar, right? Like, there's not really mechanics in this that help differentiate it. You know, like, it doesn't seem like there's really even innovative things. Like, they're literally, you know, like, audio lines are reused. Like, game modes and stuff play the same. Like, the UI is also basically the same. It's interesting, you know. It is fascinating. And I don't dislike it to any degree, you know, I think it's fine. Just to me, it's gonna be like, I really do wonder about burnout. Like, I was feeling even more almost burned out of this after the second weekend, and I'm just kind of like, you know, like, I'm streaming it a lot, obviously, because that's my work, but I'm sitting here just being like, huh, this is stuff I've played. I don't know, maybe the pacing's better this weekend, maybe they slowed it down a little bit, but still, I just, like, I feel like the way people move is, like, a little too quick, like, reaction-wise and stuff. It just feels strange. It doesn't have, like, the weighting that I like from Modern Warfare 2.2. Like, Modern Warfare 2.2, it's, you know, it's speedy. It's not like it's slow, but it did feel like a little bit more weighted, where people weren't, like, flying across the map at times. And it is a bit strange where it's sort of like, you know, jump gapping over an area, and it's like I can't even track them because people are moving so ridiculously quick. It's a bit of an issue, but yeah, it's nice being on these maps. It seems like all the kind of old spots are here, you know, all the silly stuff, but they did, yeah, it seems like some of the levels, a little bit of geometry change is the largest thing. It's sort of like, you know, one or the two of the maps, some of the little spots for covers kind of gone. It seems like they mostly just sort of open things up. But there's that idea of, like, you know, you've got these maps that were designed for speed from 14 years ago, and you're kind of, you know, throwing them into this new situation without fully revamping them. And I think that's usually why we see geometry removed from these maps. They do it with Gears of War, is they, you know, they remove spots and cover in that in order to help with the speed increase, right? Because people are moving quicker, and you don't want things blocking their momentum. That's typically what's done. And it's also kind of wild, because at this point now, compared to the last weekend, this is now like a first-party Xbox title, right? So, yeah, that's kind of surreal in itself. It's just, literally like a 1 week difference of, you know, checking this out on the PS5 for the first weekend and then seeing it here. It's wild. It is. Every part of covering this game is fascinating this year. It really is, more so perhaps than in previous years, but it's really hard to give you exciting, insightful thoughts on this sort of thing when it's sort of like I can surmise my thoughts by being like, this game feels like I've played it before, and it's just the same maps, like everything I've done before, and I'm just kind of playing it with like a new modern aesthetic, to the point where it's like, why not just remake Modern Warfare 2, the original, or just remaster it or something. It's odd to me. The whole thing is odd, because they're just like repackaging an experience, right? They're repackaging last year's game with stuff that's like new, quote unquote, but it's all maps and stuff I already played. Like, my map, this is going so bad for me, this match. It's almost embarrassing, honestly, but it started out okay. I'm getting my points across. That's all that matters. But yeah, it's intriguing. And you know, it does look a little crisper this week. They did fix the element where kind of like players were really looking as if they didn't fit within the environment. Like, I don't know how to describe that, but like last weekend it was sort of like character visibility was almost too high. Like, people did not blend into the environment at all, which looked weird. That seems way better this week. I do still think there's a little bit of room for improvement on like teammate detection, because it's not as bad, but I'm also still having situations where I'm kind of shooting at teammates and my teammates are shooting at me or other teammates, and we're kind of like, oh no, we're like, oh, I thought you were an enemy. And that's like, it happens in COD, but it seems overly common is the thing in this one, and that's not great, right? Like, it's just because I think the dot above the heads isn't, it's a little too blending in. Like, this map's not too bad for it, but some of the other ones, it tends to blend in a little bit more. I've also noticed that Estate is a lot more clear, and I don't know if that's just because I'm on the Series X, or if they increased the visual fidelity, because I would imagine with the overhead, the Series X should theoretically be giving a bit better of a dynamic 4K resolution quality compared to the PS5 version, and it's a beta too, so this stuff is subject to change, but like, yeah, it did. The environment of Estate looked a lot more clear to me when I was looking off into the distance and whatnot, which is great, because obviously that helps with, you know, taking out enemies, actually visually being able to take in, you know, and seeing with a bit more level of clarity to it. It does matter in these shooters, I gotta say. Yeah, it definitely does. I would have liked to toy around with a few more kind of weapon things, though. Like, I'm very curious to see what the sandbox that this is going to look like with a bunch of other, you know, the full roster of weapons and tools and stuff. And like, kill streaks and that, everything seems fine. It's just, yeah, and I'd like to change, because perks are now equipment that you wear. Not that it matters, though, because it's like, I get that they're maybe going for the idea that like, oh, the equipment you wear is the perks you get, but it's like, who cares? I mean, if perks are real, or, you know, because it's still not like it really changes anything to your characters, right? It's not like your guys all of a sudden dressed with certain stylings or anything, and it's just, I don't know. It's a neat idea, but I don't really care that they do that. It's like, oh yeah, cool, nice touch, but whatever. But I don't know. I think this is going to do well, and I think we're going to jump into another match. Yeah, I do really see this one doing quite well. I think it's going to leverage the previous release, which was a big success, and I think people are usually just hungry for more Call of Duty, and I don't think the fact that this one is kind of the same is really going to deter too many from jumping in on what this has to offer, but it should be interesting to see the response, because I don't think a whole bunch of people critically are going to be as, you know, kind of lenient on stuff like that, and that's going to be fascinating to see. I still do feel that the color palette for this one is a bit grayscaled. Like, it does seem a bit more natural for this, like, weekend, but, like, at the same time, I do wish that they let the range of colors pop a little bit more. It doesn't seem as vibrant as it maybe should, but this is way better than it was. Like last week, it looked like really weirdly murky, but I think this is fine to me, honestly. Like it could look a lot worse visually in regards to like the aesthetics and stuff. So yeah, I'm not too bothered by it, and it definitely doesn't stick out as bad. But I also don't really get the whole point of making everything so grayscaled. I get the idea of it being sort of, you know, a gritty aesthetic, but at the same time it's sort of like the original Modern Warfare 2 really kind of popped with its color range, and I feel like you're, tweaking that really doesn't benefit the game. Like, the maps had a style, and they had a style to them, right? I am more in the, the favorable boat of being like, if you bring maps back and remake them, you should at least try to do something visually different with them. But they are kind of just straight up one-to-one. Like, and I mean in the sense, like, Cliffside from World at War and Black Ops became like a golf course. Like changing up the theme of it. Because it just feels kind of lazy. Sort of like Cold War felt really lazy to me because they just literally took the same maps and just, ported them over. It's kind of what they did here too. Like, there's more work involved in that, but it's just like a real, to me, lack of creativity if you're just straight up ripping the maps and putting them into this instead of doing something different or new with them. Or at least adding some new levels. Yeah. Because I do worry about the long term. Like, for me, because I'm going to be streaming it over the next year, is like, am I going to get bored? Because I'm just going to be like, oh, I know these maps, and, these maps aren't different, these maps aren't changing. I'm just going to be craving some new experiences. Because it just feels so familiar. Which some people will like. Some people will be like, oh, this is all brand new to me. That's totally cool. It's totally fine. I get it. I understand, but I'm just sitting here being like, I've done all this. Change it up a bit. Please, a little. But, yeah, I don't know. Guns, everything like that's fine. Don't really have too many complaints. Seem to do pretty decent at times. Sometimes it's not great, so about usual for COD. I'm more intrigued to see how the full sandbox is going to play out, though, with all the weapons and all the tools, because that's going to change things up quite a bit. But yeah, no, I seem to unlock things, seem to go pretty well with it. Score streaks also seem a little better this weekend for unlocking things. Might have just been getting the objective points in better, but I really don't know. But yeah, I think this was really as a comprehensive kind of look at this as I can give, right? Like, a beta is a beta, it's a slice of life. They were more than generous with the maps and the game types that are present here, in terms of giving us a good look at the game. So that was, nice to have. Yeah, for me, that full release, I'm really curious to see how the campaign shapes up, the extra modes, what I'm going to be reviewing out of it. Like, does the zombies count as part of this? Is it its own thing in Warzone? What's what? But I think this is a decently strong year for multiplayer. It would be stronger if we didn't really kind of have something that was just like this last year. It would actually be really refreshing, but yeah, for me, it's just like the speed of this it's so quick. And thankfully, I've gotten used to it, because it was kind of a little overwhelming when I was doing the first day of the beta. I was like, whoa, everybody's moving so fast, and I've gotten used to it, which is good. And then I'm wondering if after this ends again, I'm going to be like, whoa, I'm not used to how fast this moves, and it's going to be interesting. It genuinely is. I'm so curious to see how this whole final thing shapes up and what this COD's going to be like. Especially since this is such a point of renewal, a point of like change for this franchise, going like a hub system. It's gonna be fascinating. Either this is gonna work really, really well, or it's gonna be weird. But no matter what I think or what I say, this is gonna be super successful, I would imagine, as it always is. And it's just whether or not you're wanting something unique and different. That's the biggest change here, is the fact that it is not really changing too much. Which to me is crazy, because usually it changes so wildly, right?